Hey, what's up guys? Hope you are doing well. Today we'll create a back to top button with HTML, CSS and vanilla JavaScript. Let's go. Okay, starting with an empty project, let's create the HTML, CSS and JavaScript files. Notice that I'm using the Visual Studio Code editor, so we have index.html, style.css and main.js. In the index.html file, I type exclamation mark, says emet abbreviation, hit tab or enter, and we get some HTML5 boilerplate code to begin with. Title will be back to top button. And now let's link the external files to our document. Style sheet will be included in the head. The default path and file name matches our needs since we are in the same folder and file name is style.css. And let's also include the JavaScript file in the body right above the closing body tag. And source will be main.js. Now let's add some content. This will create a div element with the class container. We can do this due to emet. And let's add an h1 heading with the title. And let's also add a subheading, let's say h2. This will add a horizontal line. I think HR stands for horizontal rule. And let's also add 10 paragraphs, each paragraph containing lorem ipsum sample text, let's say 100 words each. And finally, the back to top button remains. Doesn't really matter where we place it since it will have a fixed position relative to the browser window. So let's do it here at the top. Now, instead of adding text as content for the button, I would prefer some icon. So let's use font awesome. Here's the link. And let's add the icon. Arrow up. This looks nice. Okay, I think we are done with the HTML markup. So let's save and see what we've created up to this point. I'm using the live server VS Code extension to open the project. Here we are. And let's proceed to styling with CSS. Now, in order to save some time, I will just paste some basic non-related to the button CSS code. I will of course include a link to the project in the description. So now if we save, we can see the current state of our page. However, the button is still hanging unstyled at the top. So let's proceed to styling the button. Here is the selector for the button. Position will be fixed relative to the viewport. So now even if the page is scrolled, the button remains fixed at the top left corner of the page. However, I would prefer it to be closer to the bottom right edge. So bottom 20 pixels from the bottom edge of the viewport, and right 20 pixels. Okay, now again some trivial CSS styling, so let's just paste it. We set the font size, width, height, etc. And if we save, this is how the button looks like now. And let's also add a hover as well as a focus effect. And in this case, we want to reverse the colors. In other words, we want to change the background color from white to dark gray and the color from dark gray to white. And that's all basically with CSS. However, let's add some very basic responsiveness. And by the way, I used F12 to open the DevTools. Again, I will just paste this part since it's not a main focus of this project. And if we save, doesn't look perfect, but at least looks better than before. Okay, and now let's set the initial value of display property to none for the back to top button. And let's move on to JavaScript. For starters, let's show the button when user scrolls down, let's say 300 pixels from the top of the document, and again hide the button when we enter the 0 to 300 pixels range. Let's store the button element object into a variable for easier access. And now let's add an event listener for the scroll event over the window object. The scroll event fires whenever the document view is scrolled. So whenever this event occurs, let's call the scroll function. And let's implement the scroll function over here. What we want this function to do is to check the number of pixels the document is currently scrolled along the vertical axis and show or hide the button accordingly. So we want to show the button if window.page y offset is greater than 300. The page y offset property returns the distance from the top. We could alternatively use the scroll y property to get the distance from the top. However, scroll y does not work for Internet Explorer. We want to make at least this small project cross-browser compatible, so let's use the page y offset property. In order to show the button, we will set the value of display property to block. Else we want to hide the button. And in this case, we will set the value of display property to none. Let's save and test. Indeed, seems to be working as intended. Now, in order to complete the basic version of the project, which is a functional back to top button, let's add the event listener for the click event on the button. So, whenever there is a click event upon the back to top button, the back to top function will be executed, and let's implement the function here. All we want this function to do is take us back to the top. We can do this using the scroll to method over the window object. Scroll to method scrolls the document to the specified coordinates. In our case, desired position is 0, 0, the beginning of the page. So let's save and test. Indeed, back to top button takes us back to the top. So now we have a fully functional back to top button. However, user experience could be improved by adding some entrance and exit animation for the button, as well as a smooth scrolling effect so that transition from current position to the top is not instant and therefore user can easier realize it. Now, in order to add button entrance and exit animations, we'll use CSS to implement the animations and bind them to corresponding classes, and then use JavaScript to add or remove these classes accordingly. Okay, in our style.css file, we'll define the animations. Again, I will just paste this part. The button entrance class refers to the button entrance animation, which is actually the zoom in animation from the animate.css library. A while ago, I've created a video called Animations with Animate.css. Feel free to check it out for more details. And we set the animation duration for button entrance to half a second. The button exit class refers to the button exit animation, which is actually the zoom out animation from the animate.css library. And we set the animation duration for button exit to 1/4 of a second or 250 milliseconds. Now let's use JavaScript to add and remove these classes. So in the case where we show the button, we want to add the button entrance class to the button. And in the case where we hide the button, we want to add the button exit class. Now notice that this part will be executed on every scroll above the 300 pixels boundary, and this part will be executed on each scroll in the range 0 to 300. However, we only want these commands to be executed when scrolling results in the crossing of the 300 pixels boundary. One way to ensure this would be to first check whether the button entrance class is already present and only proceed if it is not. And similarly, we should only proceed to this code block if the button entrance class is already present. We should also make sure to remove the irrelevant class each time in order to be able to add it again if necessary in the future, re-triggering the animation. Note that if we try to remove a class that does not already exist, for example, the first time we enter the greater than 300 pixels domain, the button exit class will not exist, JavaScript will not complain. The remove method will remove the class if it exists, otherwise it's already gone. Okay, let's also remove the button entrance class in the opposite case. And let's save and test. Let's open the console to see if we get any errors. We don't get any errors and seems to be working fine. However, although the button exit animation was supposed to be fast, just a quarter of a second, here it seems to be happening instantly. And that's because we didn't add some delay before setting the display property to none in order to allow for the exit animation to take place. So let's do this. All we have to do is use the setTimeout method with a 250 milliseconds delay. Instead of using the fat arrow function, I'll just go old school in order to avoid trouble with Internet Explorer, and copy and paste this line in here. So let's save and test. Indeed, now everything seems to be working as expected. Nice. Now, just for the fun of it, let's try using a different button entrance and exit animation. So let's comment out the current button entrance animation and paste the new one, which corresponds to the animate.css fade in up animation. And let's also comment out the current button exit animation and paste in the new one, which corresponds to the animate.css fade out down animation. So let's save and check the result. Looks nice, I like it. Seems to be flowing with the scrolling. Okay, you can of course use your skills and imagination to amaze the users. Now, final step is to add the smooth scrolling effect. Simplest way to do this would be to use the CSS scroll behavior property. So let's do this. We used the HTML selector since we want to add smooth scrolling to the entire document. And all we have to do is set the scroll behavior to smooth. So let's save and see the result. Alright, works fine. However, up until now, January 2019 that is, the browser support for scroll behavior property is not great, only covers around 66% of global usage. So let's use JavaScript instead to implement a cross-browser compatible smooth scrolling effect. Again, I will just paste the code snippet with the smooth scroll function. A while ago, I've created a video called Smooth Scroll with JavaScript. Feel free to check it out to see step by step how we ended up with this function. But before using it, let's make some small modifications. Since this function was supposed to be used by anchor elements, in our case, target position will always be 0, the beginning of the document. We don't want these two lines. And I think that's all. Maybe for duration, 1 second is a bit long, so let's make it 750 milliseconds. And maybe now a more accurate name for the function would be smooth scroll back to top. And that's the function we want to call whenever there is a click event upon the back to top button. Okay, let's save and test, hopefully for the last time. And let's open the console to see if we get any errors. No errors in the console. Smooth scrolling seems to be working smoothly. And everything looks fine. Okay guys, that's all. Thanks for watching. For any questions, suggestions, or just to say hi, please use the comment section below. If you like this video, hit the like button and share. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more. Till next time, keep coding, keep improving, and enjoy the journey. Take care. Bye.